right, let's do it. Football at 4, powered by Inside the Birds. Ryan Rothstein filling in for Mike Gill. Pete Giordano, on-site producer, hanging with me throughout the show today as well. We're live at Chickies and Pete's inside the Tropicana Casino in Atlantic City as we welcome in Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds right now to join the conversation. Mosh, how we doing, man? We got a lot to get to, so let's do exactly that. All right, I've decided where I want to start with you. Let's look. It's just elite stuff here that I provide. Let's look at.
Let me guess, Jalen's knee.
Yeah.
No.
Let's look at Nick Sirianni, okay? Because I think this is. I'm not trying to criticize him here. I think this is an interesting one. I want your perspective. A lot's on the line this weekend for his legacy. I'm not talking about job safety. No, his job is safe. I'm talking about how he's viewed nationally and even regionally by some. He gets overlooked. He gets overlooked for a variety of reasons. The guy has an over 700 winning percentage. He's won 15 of 18, right? We all know what's been out there stat-wise by him. I look at what a potential loss would do for that narrative versus a win, which is a second Super Bowl appearance in 3 years, right? You know everything that's coming with this game. So what's your thought and outlook on that?
As far as his legacy is concerned, I mean, it's a fair question. I think you're right in that the public, the national media, maybe the national fans have a tough time reconciling who Nick Sirianni is because he had so much early success, then he had an implosion, and then he took himself out of the play. He hired new staff members and Kellen Moore last year, and almost the whole time he's been here, Howie Roseman has gotten deserved credit for putting together some elite 53-man rosters. I mean, I think when you listen to the national discourse about the Eagles, almost to an analyst, they all say the Eagles have the best 53-man roster. They may
right,
not
like anyone can do it.
Yes. So, that was
to simplify, yeah.
So they don't know how to. We can look at Andy Reid and call him a brilliant strategist. You can look at a defensive play caller, Sean McDermott, who's done a great job with the Bills defense. That's been largely, devoid of household names, maybe a few. But I do think that there's a difficult conversation about Nick Sirianni for a lot of folks about how much the success is due to his coaching. And I'm not saying that's fair. I think if you're the head coach of a team and the team is annually good, you're probably doing something right and really well. But to your point, I don't even think he's among the finalists for Coach of the Year this year.
Yes.
And he won 14 games.
Right. Just to jump in, we're here. I walked over to the sports book before the show. I picked up NFL Coach of the Year odds. And I'm looking at the list, and I'm like, where's Nick Sirianni? And I got through 12 names, Moshe, before I got to him. He's 100-1, and this is a team that is playing at home in the NFC Championship this weekend. This is a team that has a 700 winning percentage under him, and it's like he's not even in the conversation.
Right, which, again, there's nothing other than to make of that other than what does society in large view him from outside of the Philadelphia bubble, right? Because that type of thing is a national award and where you have national people deciding it. So if he were to lose, to answer the crux of your question, if Nick Sirianni were to lose at home in a game that he is favored to win against a rookie quarterback that has never in the history of the sport, at least in the Super Bowl history, a rookie quarterback has never won a conference championship game, then yes, I do think that that will fall on his shoulders more so than if they make the Super Bowl and lose again. I don't think that there's some great shame in losing a neutral game to a team that either is going to be a three-peat champion or a team as talented as Buffalo is as well. So, I agree with you, and it may not be fair. It may be fair. Who knows? But, yes, if he loses this game, I'm sure. And you can't lose a game in Philadelphia in general without getting criticized if you're the coach. So, I mean, Jonathan Gannon this week has caught more, 2-year-old shrapnel than any other coordinator I could ever remember. I can't believe how much I've heard his name this week. Yeah. But that's how it is. So, you got to when you're in this position and you have that kind of team and you're supposed to win, if you don't win, you get the criticism.
a conversation that we have a lot week to week in the NFL, regular season or postseason, key matchups, right? What are the key matchups for this game? And we discussed this a little bit earlier. We each gave what is our most important key matchup, almost posing it as the Eagles win if blank, right? I said, Saquon ground attack. PG said defense, right? Like we all sort of highlighted something different. If you have to key in on one matchup here on either side of the ball for either team that favors the Birds getting a win, where are you keying in?
I'm going to sort of alter the way you asked it,
okay,
and not a matchup. I'm going to go on a key component, and it's been pretty consistent throughout the playoffs. I think the Eagles, if they are the more ball-secure team, which they've generally been against their opponents all year long, I think they'll win. If they have 0 turnovers, I think it's very flukish. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Washington, but they turned the ball over 5 times the last time they played the Eagles and still managed to win. I have real severe doubts that they can turn the ball over 5 times again and win that game. And I would just have severe doubts in general that they could lose the turnover battle, even if it's 2-1, even if it's 1-0, and beat the Eagles, because the Eagles are the better team. And if you go back to the Super Bowl, and I'm not bringing Jonathan Gannon into this at all, but the Eagles lost the turnover battle that day, right? Just 1-0. There was only 1 turnover. It was JalenHurts, and it was early, and there was a lot of games left to play. But when you look back on it, you say you lost the turnover battle, you lost the game. You gave a good team extra possessions. If the Eagles get extra possessions from Washington, I don't think Washington this time will be able to win that game.
Moshe, do you get the sense that this Eagles defense is equipped and ready to handle Washington's no huddle? They like to really use signals a lot. They really don't like to huddle, tempo. Dan Quinn likes to go for it on 4th down virtually every single time. Do you get the sense that the Eagles D is ready to handle this no huddle and maybe not get into a track meet with Washington, but kind of try and keep up with their no huddle, their attempts at no huddle, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and it's a great question. And as Greg Cosell talked to us today on Inside the Tape that came out this morning every week on Inside the Birds with Greg Cosell, he breaks down the tape and he knows. He watches every single team every week. He said that Washington runs the most no huddle in the NFL at about a 60% clip, I believe he said, which is far. I mean, the Eagles use no huddle a lot too, and Washington far exceeds how often. So, yes, this will be a challenge. Now, the Commanders have been doing it all year, Pete, so the Eagles were prepared for it in the first time. They knew it was going to happen the second time, and they know it's going to happen again. It's kind of interesting. Usually no huddle really hurts teams that substitute a lot. And ironically, the Eagles don't substitute a whole bunch. They've been playing Jalen Carter like the whole game. They'll play Milton Williams. They'll only sub in Jordan Davis for when a team is in 12 or if they think a team's going to run. But they're not afraid to be caught with Jordan Davis over Milton Williams. I mean, they'd rather have Milton Williams, but their edge rushers are going to be Nolan Smith, and it's going to be Josh Sweat for 60 to 70% of the game. The only thing is you have to be aligned correctly. And there were times against the Rams with Zach Bond wearing the green dot for the first time that you can tell, not only can we see it, but Adam Kaplan and I had some intel from people who watch the tape that you could see a couple of times there was a misalignment. And you could also notice that the Rams did a little bit of the quick snap action to try to take advantage of the Eagles not being set. So being set and in place and being correctly aligned, Pete, will be really fundamental for the Eagles in this game.
All right, so now over to JalenHurts and kind of what he's been dealing with this week. Can you give us an update on his status and really Quignon's status? Cam Jurgens, I know that could be a concern. So just give us an update on the injuries here.
Yeah, good news for JalenHurts. And we had John DeFilippo, of course, the quarterback's coach for the Eagles in 2017 when they won the Super Bowl. He was on our Patreon channel last night. We do an Ask an Eagle live stream where we have our members ask the questions to somebody involved with the Eagles, past or present. And someone had asked John about a quarterback injury and certain legs which get hurt. And he said because JalenHurts is a right-handed quarterback, the left leg of his, which is the one that's hurt, is the plant leg and not the drive leg. So he said if it was the other way around, if it was drive leg that would get hurt, then you'd have a world of issue. Because then you can't really get torque behind your throw. Now, you still have to transfer your weight to your plant leg. So if it's really bothering you, that'll be difficult, but it would be way more catastrophic if it was the other way around. Hurts was at practice today. There's video of it. He's running around looking somewhat normal. I would say ginger, but not completely like a guy who can't move around. So I think he should be all right. I'm sure it's not feeling great, and I'm sure he's going to be limited in some capacities with what he can do. But let's be real, the passing game is not a huge part of what the Eagles do anyway. So as long as he can make the basic fundamental throws that he needs to make, then I think that they'll be okay there. Now, Quinyon Mitchell told Andrew DeCecco he's good to go. So that's good to know. He's going to play. I'm sure his shoulder doesn't feel like an off-season Sunday morning. You wake up out of bed, you feel great, right? No, I'm sure it's banged up, but he'll be good to go. The ones to worry about, guys, is Dallas Goedert. Adam Kaplan and I always talk about the pop-up injuries, the guys who play an entire game on Sunday, and then the injury report comes out Wednesday and Thursday, and they got something that they never left the game for. So this is the second time Dallas Goedert is dealing with an ankle injury, and he was not at practice. Well, I guess he's watching practice, so he's not practicing today for what the media saw. And Cam Jurgens on the injury report yesterday and today, no practice because of a back injury. Backs and linemen, not good. And even if he plays, you want a guy to have a good full week of practice. I think communication at times against stunts and line games have been a little bit problematic for the offensive line in the last 2 weeks. So it's definitely something to watch. If Jurgens can't play and they have to move Dickerson to center and play Steen at left guard, the talent is there, but the continuity, the communication, that all gets messed up right there. And, of course, if Dallas Goedert can't play, then you're talking about a really big part of your offense that's not going to be there.
All right, so I want you to expand on that for a second, Moshe, because that's a big deal. And I'll just ask, how big of a deal is it in your mind, right? Let's go glass half empty, and let's say for whatever reason Jurgens is a no-go. I'll throw in Goddard. If both those guys don't play, how much does that change this outlook in your mind? Is that a massive deal that maybe people don't realize?
Yes. Yeah. There's no. I mean, I'm not saying they can't win.
Yeah.
If that's the case, but it's massive to me, Ryan, for two reasons. One, start with the offensive line. So what we've seen the Eagles do in the past when they have a center injury is play a backup center. They always had a guard/center to be able to go in because the Eagles and Jeff Stoutland don't typically like to move a starter into a different position, then put a backup at the other position because theoretically you're weakening yourself at two spots. You're now having backup, so to speak, at two spots. So
that's what's happening now.
Though, right, that's what they're doing. They've decided this year, because there have been a couple of times that Jurgens has had to come out of a game and Dickerson has slid over, that they've decided that's still better than the alternative. But against a very good Washington defensive front, guys like Jonathan Allen, Payne, Newton, their first-round pick, they do a ton of twisting, they do a ton of stunting. That would be, to me, even though I like Tyler Steen, again, it's not about talent. It's about continuity, it's about communication, and what the Commanders will do to try to bring pressure up the middle if that were the case. And then secondarily to that, right now A.J. Brown is not the A.J. Brown that we've seen, and the passing offense in general is not what we've seen. And if you take away the physicality that Dallas Goedert brings, for example, against the Packers, if he throws that same screen against the zero coverage, right, to Grant Calcaterra, does Calcaterra stiff arm the same guy 3 times in a row on the way to the end? No. Yeah. There's a physical presence that is missing from your passing game when A.J. Brown isn't right and he's only running slants and hooks and the occasional deep route, and B, if you don't have Dallas Goedert out there both blocking and catching passes. It's just different because this Washington defense does not play around up front. I know that you can run against them, but you guys, everybody knows Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner are dishing out some punishment lately, and that front, ever since they got healthier, that front four has done a much better job. So I would not want to beat the Eagles and not have those two guys.
What's the chess match looking like for this game? I know we've touched on a lot already previewing these matchups and everything in between, but you and PG touched on earlier, Washington no huddle, 60%, I believe the statistic was. Vic Fangio is obviously as prepared as it gets. He's always trying to see what the next move is inevitably going to be. I'm not trying to make you be Vic here, but what could be that next move, right? What is something that Washington can do to possibly throw the Eagles off, right?
Right. I'll tell you what. I don't know if Vic will do this. He may sort of try some variation of it, because he hasn't done it yet. And also, no one had done this to the Commanders up until last week. We got a little intel from someone who saw the tape that said that the Lions tried to use a spy on Daniels. And that was really the first time someone tried to spy him. I don't think Vic has spied anybody. I don't think he likes to vote. He likes the concept of team defense and players operating within their roles, passing guys off. I don't know. I mean, I've never talked to him about it. I've never heard him speak about it. I don't know. I have talked to some people who know his defense, and they say it doesn't like jibe that they've heard Vic wanting to use a spy before. It would sort of go against what Vic sort of likes to do defensively and playing a team concept of defense and not having one guy sort of be responsible for one thing. But to your point, Ryan, if you're looking for something to try to throw that offense off and to try to maybe safeguard yourself against Jaden Daniels taking over, well, you got some athletic guys. I mean, you can use Nolan Smith in that role as a dropper and a spy and rush an inside like a Bond or a Burks instead in your four-man rush. You can use other players that way. That's really the only thing I see maybe, because Vic is normally not a guy who's going to change a whole lot based on the opponent. He's still going to do what he does, what he wants to do.
Moshe, talk about the pressure a title game brings as a whole compared to making it to the Super Bowl. I mean, to me, this is the pressure game. If you're an NFL player, this is the game that really dials up the intensity and pressure compared to the 2-week noise and all that comes with the Super Bowl. So just talk about the pressure that comes with making a championship game for your conference.
For a reporter, Pete? Oh man!
I was going to add. I didn't want to crush PG there, but I was going to say, when did Mosher play for the Birds?
I was going to say Mosher. I was going to preface it by saying, Mosher, I know you're not a player, but I forgot to
I'm
do
as cool as a fan, PG. I'm good. I'm feeling great, by the way. My shoulder's good. My knee is
how
good.
are you?
How's your AC joint, Mosher? Good.
It's a good question, and John DiFilippo, actually, someone asked him, this is the reason why our Patreon channel is so great, and everybody should become a member. It's patreon.com/InsideTheBird. Somebody asked him that exact question. And what John said was, look, as a coaching staff, you've got to have a couple of things ready, right? That's why the last time the Eagles were in a conference, well, not the last time, when they won the Super Bowl, we all remember the flea flicker in the 2017 game. I don't think they needed any gimmicks against the Niners because Brock Purdy goes out early and that game got out of hand. So I'm sure that they had a couple of things, but even in the Super Bowl, the Philly special. So you want to have that, but you also, and Andy Reid's great at this, you want to set a tone of looseness. It's called having another faceless opponent. Doug Peterson used to talk about that. Who cares who you're playing? It doesn't matter if it's Jaden Daniels and he's some wonder kid, or if it's the Niners and Kyle Shanahan or Andy Reid and the right. It's a nameless, faceless opponent. And if you treat it like that way in practice, where it's just another practice, and Pete, to your question, they didn't do anything differently. They had their same practice schedule. They didn't like practice at the link extra. They just did what they do. And that usually sets the tone to be able to go out there and play nerves free. The first quarter is always some nerves. And I think how they coach the game in the first quarter especially might help them. I think some coaches coach tight. Some coaches loosen it up and don't mind come out throwing. Now, the Eagles have been pretty conservative in general, so I imagine they're going to stick to that and just come out running. But that might just make the team feel right at home. Like, we're not going to – hey, everybody wants the Eagles to come out like they did against the Steelers, right? Just throw the ball all over the place. But that might not be the recipe, because a couple of incompletions, you don't want your guys getting tight and saying, why did we come out like this, right? What we do is run the ball.
That's what we've been saying, is stay within yourself. And Jalen Hurts, I think, is the guy that can do that. Yeah. He's really a guy that stays within himself. He knows what he has to do, and we've been seeing that all season long.
Right, and that's what John DiFilippo called paralysis by analysis. You want to avoid that. You don't want to overthink it. You just want to practice and coach and play the way you do every single week of the year.
It's interesting that's great insight from DiFilippo. I got to check that out, because
he comes on our platform a lot, man. He's really insightful. He's so good.
Yeah, I got to catch that recent one, because Bill Belichick was on McAfee last week, and he said that same thing. Like, he said something that's really good for coaches to do this time of year is actually throw in, I don't know if you use flea flicker, but he said, fake punt, whatever it may be. And then that had me thinking, like, have the Eagles done anything like that all year? I would love to see them do something like that in this game.
Well, the only thing I can think of recently, a couple weeks ago, they tried that halfback option pass with Saquon, right? Didn't they tried to have him throw a ball?
We've seen some fake tush pushes. Variations on that.
Right. But other than that, no. And you go to you think about the Lions game. Now the Lions, I don't kill them because they have used the gimmick, gadget, and trick play all year long. Going back to last year against Dallas, right? The one that got called back that shouldn't have. But I don't know. Jameer Gibbs trying to throw, or no, it wasn't Gibbs. Who was the wide receiver?
Jamison Williams.
Jamison Williams. Man, that just one felt like out of place, out of sorts. That's the kind of stuff that can ruin you in. So you want to even when John DiFilippo told a great story about the Philly special. I'll just tell you this: it wasn't going well in practice that week.
Really,
you guys should really again, if you listen to the interview on Patreon, patreon.com/InsideTheBirds, you'll get all the inside intel on it. But it worked during the game. But again, they called it at a good time in the game. It's not like the Eagles are down 2 touchdowns. They had asserted themselves pretty early in that game, so that the momentum was there to be taken if they scored the touchdown there, and they did.
It's still so gutsy. Like, they called it at a good time because it worked, right? I mean, I say it tongue-in-cheek, but it's that, I don't know. Interesting stuff. Great stuff, Moshe. At Geoff P. Mosher, Inside the Birds. Make sure you're following everything Inside the Birds has going on. InsideTheBirds.com. The Patreon, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. You just heard what they put out content-wise. It is the best stuff around. So, Mosher, we appreciate your time as always. Great insight, and we'll catch up soon, man.